This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
But what are the issues that we still have to deal with when it comes to school unrest? And that we saw in the last couple of days that the ministry did come out and pronounce itself in various things, that schools are not going to close. We are not looking at early midterm, but what we are looking at is a commission whereby we can make sure that the various stakeholders will come into play to ensure that certain things need to happen. And we're going to make sure that we are very serious about how we deal with this. They've also come out to say that in the second term, whereby the period is very long, that what we're going to see is that we'll probably see a shortened period, that maybe we will see term 2 will not be so long, and that some of these issues will be addressed through the commission. Those are some of the things that came out in the conversation, where CS Ogamba came out and said, okay, like, we understand, but schools will not close. Those issues will be addressed because we'll have a commission and we'll deal with some of these things. Now, school unrest, there is an issue. Those issues are not being addressed, but maybe this commission will address them. But there seems to be a way in which you can address these issues without just glossing over them. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. That can we handle or manage school unrest through the role of peer mediation? And joining us in studio this morning is James Mang'erere, who's an advocate of the High Court and joins us in the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Good to see you.
Yes.
We're going to get into this thing because we even saw a video the other day of a parent who heard that his child was one of those who was purporting to bring drama and decided to whip her in the full glare of daylight and everybody watching. And perhaps we say that's not the way to go about it. But I'm sure we're going to go into some of these things. But for what you're saying, mediation has a role to play here. So let's talk about that. Before we get into that conversation, Dennis is going to share today's proverb. We'd love to get your interpretation of it.
Thank you.
Yes, today we are in Guinea. One thing that stands out in Guinea is that it's a rich country that has many resources. You talk about gold, diamond, bauxite as well, that is used in the production of aluminium. Let's go to the proverb. The God says, what belongs to the sheep does not involve me until the butcherman shows up.
What belongs to the sheep doesn't involve me. Okay.
Until the butcherman shows up. How would you interpret it?
Yeah, that's a very challenging one. But what I can say is that you only identify. You don't really identify that the sheep belongs to you. And you will need to probably gain out of it when the butcherman shows up with a knife, because once it becomes meat, either it's going to be eaten by other people or it's going to be sold and somebody needs something out of it. So I think it goes around the issue of ownership. Yeah, you only discover that it's yours when it's almost becoming something that is useful. Yeah, that's what I can interpret it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Would I be wrong in saying that when we look at the school unrest, that you seem to think that one of the ways to handle this is by having a conversation?
Well, I just want to say did not start yesterday. What you are seeing did not start yesterday. In 1991, we had the St. Kisito school, secondary school in Meru, where students died out of what the mess we are seeing right now. After that, there was Bombolulu girls. And all these times when these events have happened, the government has constituted commissions of inquiry.
Yes.
They have written reports, and either the reports have been shelved and we have moved on until another event takes place. You know, they always say that doing the same thing and expecting different results is what they call insanity. I think it's right time now Kenyans sit down and look at it. The peer mediation I'm talking about is the way of educating our young people to know how to resolve disputes when they are very young. Educating them to be emotionally mature, to be calm in situations where the disputes arise, to have techniques of resolving disputes, first of all, between themselves before the teachers come in to intervene. Last week, I attended a conference in Boston, in Massachusetts, for mediators all over the world. And this issue about what's happening in our country was being discussed in the forums. So I tried to ask the mediators, these people who have been practicing from different countries, what have they done in those countries? And the first question they asked me is, in your country, do your schools have a peer mediation program? And I told them we introduced something like that 5 years ago. We have trained a number of mediators, but it appears the government has not impressed this idea of peer mediation. Why? Probably they believe there are other ways of resolving disputes, because what I'm seeing right now in our country is everybody blaming everybody. People are pointing fingers to the parents. Others are pointing fingers to the government. Others are pointing fingers to the students themselves. And this blame game is not solving a dispute that has been ongoing for the last, from 1991, I think it's almost 20 years, with several incidents of this type. So what I was told and what I've always been saying is that our children need to be trained on conflict competency from the early stages of life. Because countries that have adopted peer mediation have realized there are a lot of calm in their school environments. Students become emotionally mature and they deal with conflicts in a way that serves the interest of everybody. They develop what we call empathy and understanding and patience, something that we do not have, something that our parents do not teach our children at home. So I just want to state that what brings me over is to tell them what I've been saying all along, that the best way to deal with conflict in our schools is impressing the peer mediation programs.
Yet we find ourselves at a position where there is the aspect of feeling that students are there to be seen, not to be heard.
Yes.
Where students are being read down or being talked at and not being talked to, because it is directions that come from one side and there is no outlet. Students don't know who to talk to because that is the society, rather the system that has been there for a very long time. Are you therefore stating that for that to change, the system, even policy, has to change and intentionally put in place an opportunity for feedback mechanism to be present?
Students are human beings like anybody else. They need to be heard, valued, and respected. We have created an environment where the students' opinion may not take into account. And you see, human beings usually, when they're treated in a way that they don't feel valued, they don't feel understood, definitely what you are seeing right now is people who have developed impatience. They are emotionally disturbed. This process of peer mediation I'm talking about is a process that helps students develop empathy. First of all, is something that's very important. Empathy is understanding other people's feelings, being calm in instances of pressure, and knowing how to approach conflicts constructively. Something that's missing in our students. They don't get it at home because parents are pissy. Parents leave home very early in the morning at 6 o'clock to get back to work. They also go through a lot of pressure. They come back at 9:30 in the evening after going through all this traffic jam. And the only thing probably they do is they're trying to make a lot of money, as much money as possible, to ensure that their children are comfortable. But children do not only need money. They need presence. Because this is the only way we can develop them emotionally. What you are seeing right now are children who are not resilient, children who are not patient, children who are not calm, because they have not experienced that from the environments they have from home. So I can tell you how powerful peer mediation is. Peer mediation, students start learning very early. First of all, on how they can solve disputes and conflicts between themselves. Not only solving, but managing. There's a big difference between solving and managing. If students are able to manage their conflicts, because there's what we call intra-personal conflict and interpersonal conflict. Intrapersonal conflict are those conflicts within the students themselves. And that's why I'm talking about emotional literacy. How they can manage themselves emotionally, and the interpersonal conflict is how they can solve conflicts between themselves and other students. You know, teachers are taking much time these days trying to solve conflicts between students. If students are trained to solve conflict themselves, not only will they feel responsible citizens, they'll feel honored, they'll feel accepted, they'll feel valued. And these skills of leadership are what the society is looking for. So when I talk about peer mediation, I'm talking about empowering these students very early in life to know how to deal with conflict. Look even at our courts right now. Courts are resolving disputes in a restorative way. They are embracing mediation. So this peer mediation is something that needs to be inculcated very early in the life of our students. In fact, I always tell people, if we do not put these things in place, then this situation is going to become worse than we are seeing right now. I think it's right time for the Kenyans to stop now. Let's look for a different way, an alternative way of dealing with conflict, rather than coming up with ways of dealing with the indiscipline that we have in school. Why don't we empower our own students to have the resilience, to have the skills, to have the competency, to be able to resolve those conflicts within themselves and their colleagues within the school compound. If we can be able to manage that, all these commission of inquiries we are picking, policies we are writing, can only be pieces of paper if we don't action already what we have. Like now, this program of peer mediation. Do we have the capacity to deliver it? Of course, yes. You know, the last 5 years, we have been working on training peer mediation tutors. The only thing we do not have in this country is a policy that impresses these peer mediation programs in our schools. The Ministry of Education has not taken this very seriously. We are chasing a problem to a different direction instead of facing what is here and dealing with it instantly. We have a solution with us.
Okay.
Why don't we adopt it?
I hear you say because what you're talking about is that training amongst peers so that they can understand how to deal with a conflict situation.
Yes.
But if you look at the issues that are affecting students in school today, and unfortunately this largely falls within the boarding schools, largely.
Yes.
That doesn't take away day schools from this, but largely if we look at the school unrest right now, that's the majority of where the problem lies. It's against the backdrop of a system where children are to be seen and not heard.
Yes.
So I can be empowered as you like.
Yes.
And I can know how to deal with conflict situations. But when I go and who am I telling that I have this particular problem, and who is listening to me in a system that already seems like it has been fixed to not take into consideration what a student has to say? How do you work within those lines?
Teachers themselves, in our teacher training programs, we should also incorporate conflict resolution skills. Most of the teachers who are leaving teacher schools, I'm sure what they are being taught about is counseling. There's a very big difference between counseling and mediation, because counseling is listening to the parties and assisting them to manage their own emotions. Mediation, on the other hand, goes a step further. It teaches you on how to approach and resolve conflict. So what teachers are being told usually in their teachers training programs is how to do peer counseling. What we are saying, there is a better way. In fact, the government should inculcate change the syllabus of the training of teachers to include techniques on how to manage conflict. Because what I've seen in most schools, teachers themselves have a challenge in as far as approaching and resolving conflicts are, because we are thinking in our country, we are thinking that the only best way of solving disputes is retribution, punishment. Okay? And we can give punishment in different ways, not only corporal punishment, different ways, but punishment is not the only way of resolving or assisting to resolve conflicts, especially in our schools, we should also be in a position to embrace restorative systems of resolving disputes, whereby we reconcile the interests of students or student teachers who have conflict within the school environment. Retribution, even the courts are moving away from retribution anyway. You see, the courts are embracing court annexed mediation. They are encouraging private mediation. Why are we doing this? If we are doing this, if we are embracing restorative justice within the court system, why don't we also encourage restorative justice within our schools?
You know, you talk about something that one would say the tone that is set at the top determines how that then trickles down.
Exactly.
Because what we've just been treated to recently is even the response from the principal secretary at the time was that of what you're talking about, punishment and retribution.
Yes.
For those who have done this, we will arrest you, anything about schools, we will not close schools. And that is the tone that is cascaded down all the way. And students say, if the principal doesn't hear us, then where do we run to? But then again, you mentioned the fact that there is need for change of policy as well. But again, why is it so difficult for that to be picked if it is a clear and surest way of handling these problems that we find today? What is making it difficult for the ministry to pick that policy and put it as part and parcel of its mandate, pretty much?
You know, in our community, we are slow to change. Most people do not want to embrace change, especially when it's brought about by people, experts who are not, in inverted commas, politically correct. I would be in your station today trying to tell them something very important, but it also depends on my status in society. I'm an expert in this field. I have consulted enough. As I have just told you, I met a number of experts in Boston, Massachusetts last week, and I have talked about this issue about unrest in schools. And every person I interviewed, I was at Harvard University and Suffolk University and others, every expert that I talked to asked me, does your country embrace peer mediation? Because if you go to Britain, you go to America, you even go to Brazil in Latin America, most schools have embraced peer mediation because they believe that to be able to build a society of citizens who are responsible, who are conflict competent, who are resilient, this education about knowing how to resolve conflicts early in life is a serious policy issue within any education system. So I believe that if the Minister of Education is listening right now and all the other stakeholders, it's high time that we embraced peer mediation in our schools. Do we have the expertise to assist them to do so? Of course, yes. Like now in MTI East Africa, we have been running a program for 5 years, training peer mediation tutors. We have a program, we have a syllabus. So it is important that as a country, it's now the right time to stop and look at it again. It's now the right time to embrace peer mediation. And we have enough expertise within the country to put these systems in place. And even people from outside are willing to help us if we want to help ourselves. But if we continue picking commissions of inquiry, coming up with reports and shelving them until another incident happens, I'll be coming to your studio again 10 years from now, and we'll be talking about the same thing. So we need to stop now and embrace this system. We are ready to roll out peer mediation to our schools, and that time is now. Not 10 years from now when 100 students have died through this unrest that we are seeing right now.
Who would they be talking to? Understanding the students can bring their issues to whom? Remember that we operate within systems.
Of course.
Who are they talking to?
When we establish a program of peer mediation in school, there are a number of things that we do. First of all, you don't go directly to the school. You either talk to the board of governors, the school management. From there, you train the teachers. Like there's a number of schools where we have trained teachers to be peer mediation coordinators. After that, we consult the parents who allow their children to be trained as peer mediators. You cannot train everybody within school, just a few students as peer mediators, who will then be identified. They will graduate and be identified to other students, that when students have issues, when there are problems within themselves, they can then bring it to the peer mediation mediators through a peer mediation coordinator who is a teacher. So there is an elaborate program that can be put in school. What it requires is the support of the government. And I'm talking about the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education. We need this Ministry of Education to embrace it as a policy. We have tried it in private schools, and it's working very well in some private schools. But that's just a drop in the ocean. It's now important that the Ministry of Education takes it as a policy issue, so that we can embrace it. We can put a pilot program within our country, even for 2 years, and try to pick a few schools and put it as a pilot program. The results from that will show the ministry that this process really works. Not only does it help students become good leaders, they can transfer these skills outside the school gates to their own families. And there is no parent who will not like to see their students having these skills, being a good leader, and being able to resolve conflicts even outside the school compound once they are through with school. So it's a value adding for the students that we have, not only for the purpose of resolving the kind of unrest that we have, but it also adds the value to the students we have all the way to university and the citizens' life outside here.
Where do parents fit in this conversation? Because for a very long time, it's been seen as if parents, I've sent my child to school, here in Kazi ya Mwalimu, but in this conversation you said, we will go to schools and speak with the BOMs, who then one would say is a representative of parents, right? But for every individual parent out there, how do they fit into this so that even at their homes, they encourage peer mediation among their children? Because one would say, if it's from that basic level, then extrapolating the same would be easy.
You see, I just want to take you back and ask you how a parent feels. You just told me a few minutes ago that a parent went to school and identified one of his daughters as being part of the people who are planning to pan up the school. And they had to pick them up.
Yeah.
You know, parents are really disappointed when they find that one of their daughters or sons was involved in arson and other students have died. That thing really haunts the parents and they feel helpless. So I'm thinking we have a way of ensuring that we can empower our students to be able, first of all, to be calm, resilient, under pressure, and also be conflict competent. Not only will it save our parents from the kind of situation that they find themselves in, it will empower their own children not to be involved in these heinous acts, because the lives of those children are permanently affected. The lives of the parents are permanently affected, because when you send your son or daughter to school, what you are expecting is to see a person who is successful. You are looking for success. There's nobody who is more interested in the success of their children than their parents. So you have paid school fees, you have bought all the books, and you believe that your child will graduate from school and become an important person in society. You only receive a call one morning and will be told that your son or your daughter was involved in arson and other students have died. That is heartbreaking for the parents. To avoid a situation like that, I think the people who should support peer mediation are the parents. Even if they are told to pay some money to ensure that their children are trained to become peer mediators. This is a skill that the children can carry home after school. This is a skill that can make their children more confident, more resilient, more calm, have empathy, and grow into responsible citizens in the future. So it's important that parents themselves embrace this and support the Ministry of Education and the teachers, even private schools, to ensure that we put these systems in place. And that time is now, not 10 years from now when we have 200 students dead.
Some questions may come in because it would seem as though a similar thread of these issues runs from institution to institution. And we've heard them. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, we've heard them over and over again. The quality of food, the quantity of food, the method of discipline, not enough books in school for them to be able to do their job, overcrowding in some of these spaces. These are the things that these students are complaining about. That means they operate in a system that has already established a certain way of doing things. Now, Mang'erere, I can come to you and say it in the politest way possible. I can come to you and I can complain as somebody who was brought up very well. But if the system has already been set in a certain way, I would imagine that there's very little I will say, no matter how rude or how politely I say it or bring it up, because these are some of the things that peer mediation does train on.
Yes.
But those are the things that I have issues with. How do you turn those things around if the system is not willing to change them or hasn't changed them in years? And mind you, these issues that we talk about occur in the second term. In the second term. It's interesting because I said I'm actually going to go and check and see, did we see fires coming up in first or third term? And we didn't.
From what I know and what I have seen, even read in your newspapers, it usually occurs when students are almost starting to do their exams and they are under pressure. So we are not saying that peer mediation will eliminate the overstretching of students in institutions or improve the infrastructure in schools or improve the kind of foods that they eat. Those are challenges that most schools are facing. But what I'm saying is this. Even when students complain, the way they deliver their message, when they are trained, it will not occur in such a way that it can cause turmoil in schools. In fact, when we train students, not only students, because we also train teachers who handle those students, then they find better ways of resolving this because then they are able to understand other people's feelings. You know, let me tell you one thing about conflict. Conflict sometimes is about perception. If I draw a W in front of me here, it's a problem. And I ask you what type of letter I've drawn. Without thinking, you will tell me it's an M. And if I ask your friend on the other side, he will tell me it's a 3. If there was somebody on this side, he will say it is an E. None of us is stupid or crazy. We are all right from our own perspective. We have put a lot of pressure in our schools because we do not have enough infrastructure. Sometimes the food is bad because that's what the school can afford, according to the fees that is available. But this is a problem that we know exists. What do? Do we send our children home? Do we ban the school? Is that the best solution to resolve the dispute? The issue is that our children will be taught to be calm under pressure because we know those pressures exist, to be resilient. And you see, as teachers try to find better ways of managing a very difficult situation, you'll find that students who have already been trained in peer mediation can be on board to work together to find solutions together with the teachers. Those ones that are available. You make a bad situation better by working with the students in a collaborative way. What we are missing is collaboration. Because even in conflict, we know what she's saying is very clear. Schools are undergoing very difficult times because they do not have enough money. They don't have adequate infrastructure. The food may not be what the children are eating at home. That's a problem that we know. But how do we approach that conflict in a collaborative way that may not result into what we are seeing right now? Okay. Because the answer is not panning up schools or pitting up teachers or closing schools. The answer is trying to look at conflict from different perspectives and trying to resolve it in a collaborative way. And the only way we can solve those conflicts in a collaborative way is having both parties being conflict competent, both the students and the teachers. So if we are training students, teachers equally require some kind of training on how to approach conflict because you may have very resilient students and very highly conflict incompetent teachers. That mathematics will not match. So both parties require some kind of training so that we can be able to handle conflicts which exist, which you cannot wish away, in a collaborative manner.
Yeah,
that's the purpose of empowering our students to that effect.
You've mentioned that you've trained a few schools, some private schools in the country.
Yes.
And in that training, maybe you can just tell us, what did you find was pressing from all stakeholders, so parents, teachers, and even the students themselves? And after going through the training, what are some of the successes, perhaps, that everybody needs to know or we can learn?
Yeah. Once students have gone through training, first of all, they have what we call emotional literacy. They handle matters more maturely. They are resilient when they are working under pressure, because that's what usually happens.
But what is the initial problem that students raise as being a concern?
The initial problem is that, first of all, the teachers do not listen to them. They are ignored. They are not valued. They don't find that their proposals or their opinions are valued because they are regarded as students who should listen and learn. So when sometimes they complain, they do not get an environment where their complaints are listened to, number one. Number two, they feel that they are being put under a lot of pressure, especially when exams are coming close. Teachers are drilling them for the purpose of passing exam. And, our children are not as resilient as us. We grew in very tough environments. This is another generation which we must also understand. They can't go through a lot of pressure. But let me also tell you, they have to pass exam, exactly, that's what we want. But at the same time, the way we treat them. When you value somebody, it also even works at the workplace. When your employees are valued, when they are treated well, they may not even think about salary increment. Employees you see agitating for salary increment or agitating for good conditions of service is when they think they are being oppressed and they are being misused by the employer. And the same thing applies to our students. If students can feel valued, they can feel accepted and respected, even in very difficult conditions, our students will collaborate with teachers in resolving the existing problems. Yeah. But when they are ignored, when they are devalued, when they are treated as small people who do not have an opinion, definitely they are going to become, they are going to resist. And the kind of resistance, it can be subtle resistance or even physical resistance. And students have resorted to physical resistance by banning schools. So it's good that we now calm down and look at these things differently. That's what brings me to your studio, and I hope people are listening. I have done research. I've gone through other countries where these programs are being implemented. They are working very well. And now, at least, it's a matter of building capacity and getting collaboration from the Ministry of Education, getting funding from donors, and we put this thing down into practice. And the time is now.
In those schools that you've taken the message, right?
Yes.
Now that it's been received and is being implemented.
Yes.
What are some of the changes that one would say are like the immediate wins that those schools have managed to tell you that this is the change that we see of the training that you brought?
The playgrounds are calmer. Classes are calm. You can see the peace we use within the dormitory. There are fewer expulsions, fewer suspensions. Teachers get more time to concentrate on teaching than resolving petty issues within the students, because students are capable of doing it on their own. The advantages are so many, only that we have not sensitized the public to see that. So those schools that have embraced peer mediation, even the performance is better, because students are confident, they are able to concentrate, because they have lesser problems and they are able to withstand pressure most of the time, because of the training.
And so you can actually see that it's not just teaching students on this peer education to realize how you can actually solve conflicts better, but that on the other side as well, that those who administer the process, those who are vanguards, saying that, we are the ones who are the stakeholders here, caring for these children, that we also need to understand where they're coming from.
We train them too. So it's not only limited to students. When we are putting a program in school, we train the teachers. Sometimes we sensitize the board of governors and the parents also. Parents need to understand the importance of this. So we have a seminar with the parents before we bring this process in place. So it's a multi-stakeholder thing. Once this thing has been accepted and impressed, and you have sensitized all the parties enough, it flows.
Is there enough time? Because they say that it takes twice the amount of time to unlearn something that has been learned. Maybe even 3 times, but at least we've read that it's twice. So if you've been doing something for 10, 20 years, that it's going to take you double that time to unlearn these behaviors which have been compacted, which have been in you. That there's some schools at this point where a student will come to you and actually tell you, I'm not feeling well today. Mang'erere, the default answer is endo fanya kazi utaki kusoma. You see, that's the default answer. Somebody comes to you and says, actually, I have an emergency. The default thinking is that this student is lying. How do you unlearn some of those things without us realizing also that those responses that come to students, they don't sit well with the student. And that's what leads to them saying, you know what, these people don't listen to me anyway, so here's a situation whereby I'm going to choma the thing.
No, in neuroscience, which is the science of how human beings think, we are told that if you repeat something continuously for 21 days,
It becomes a habit.
It becomes a habit. So the first thing that the teachers and the school community need to learn is to embrace this issue to do with peer mediation. I know they are used to, change. To be emotionally intelligent, you must also be ready to embrace change in any environment. And what options do we have? Do we just allow this situation to continue? Students dying, destroying property. Now, we have reached a point where this doesn't help. We have tried. And as I told you, I just wanted to tell you a few statistics which Kenyans know very well. In 1991, that's when we had our first incident at St. Kisito. 1998, Bombolulu. 1999, Nyeri High School. 2001, Changuli, where 67 students died. 2017, Moi Girls. 2024, Endarasha, Hillside, Endarasha. 2026, Utumishi. A total of almost 200 students have died.
And
Are those deaths not enough to now tell people that we have to have things changed?
And of course, there are multiple other incidents where people may not have died,
Yes, exactly.
but that property was destroyed. But
Exactly.
I mean, there are at least 50 other schools that have gone through damage through fire because of these same things.
Exactly. And that's why I'm saying it's high time now we sit down a little. Even in your own household, if you see something is not working, I think you step aside a little and look at it differently. Right now, I know you have said there's those teachers who believe that the corporal punishment is the only way that works in schools. And I've heard so many parents saying, let's go back to where we were.
Or
with
close
the
down
corporal
boarding
punishment.
schools. Yeah.
Let me tell you, corporal punishment doesn't help at all. And this has been discovered. Most countries in America, if you cane somebody's child, you go to jail. And we don't have such things happening. What we need to do is to embrace the culture of tolerance. That's the most important thing. Number one. Number two, let's realize that we can only resolve disputes through collaboration. Let's make our parents, our teachers, and our students conflict competent. Because unless we realize that, if we still insist that children must be caned, they must be punished, they must be put under pressure, we'll just continue with this same trend. And when I began this interview, I told you, if we continue doing things the same way and expecting different results, it is clear insanity. So do Kenyans wish to continue with insanity, or do we want to change things and have these things stopped? The time for stopping this mayhem is now, if they listen, and we have the capacity to do that. We are ready to assist the government and the Ministry of Education put these systems in place. And we have been working, though people have not been knowing, we have been working at the background, training tutors, training students in peer mediation. So if the ministry wants to run this program and run it now and put this mayhem to the end, we can do it right now. But if we still believe we can continue writing reports and constituting commissions and taking a cup of tea in hotels, coming up with reports which you do not implement, let's continue doing so, and we continue seeing many more students dying and many institutions being burned to the ground. Time to stop is now.
You see, you've talked about implementation.
Yes.
And implementation is where the crux of the matter is.
Yes.
Because, like you rightfully said, from 1991, we've seen several committees that have been put in place, task forces,
Yes.
to look into the problems.
Yes.
And every other task force's report has had similar reports with relevant implementation mechanisms to change the situation.
Yes.
But implementation has remained being zero. What you're talking about now is a new structure, a new
Yes.
way of looking at things
Yes.
that again would call for implementation of
Yes.
the same from a government policy
Yes.
level. Why do I say that?
Yes.
Because if we're talking about peer mediation where, for example, students have said,
Yes.
in my home, my parents don't feed me weevils. When I come to school, I don't want to eat weevils.
Yes.
And the mediation committee has arrived at a conclusion that the source of the problem we have is because the students are being fed weevils and they have a problem with that. It is escalated. But at the end of the day, the government has to plug in and ensure that capitation gets to school on time and it is enough so that schools are able to procure good food for the students. It is a chain.
Yes.
It's a chain reaction that you've just sorted
Yes,
there.
yes, yes.
Therefore, government must be plugged in.
Yes.
How likely is that to happen
You
when
see,
it comes especially to the implementation?
What I'm talking about, the first thing is recognition by the Ministry of Education.
Okay.
That's the most important thing. The Ministry of Education, if it does not have the capacity to handle this, it should signpost schools to peer mediation institutions that can be implemented outside there. We can work in collaboration. Number two, they should give guidance to schools on how to implement these programs, because governments are there to put up policy. That does not, because we can solve the dispute by getting good food in our schools. But good food does not mean that the exams are not coming next week, and therefore we are under pressure. We can even create rice. We can make our schools like hotels. But if we still, but if we still are having exams at the end of the month, and students have to sit and pass or fail, that doesn't take pressure away. So I'm trying to say that. Then we should import impaired conflict resolution in teachers' training institutions. Number three, we should also integrate conflict solutions to youth, things like scouts, youth groups. This is a culture that we must start implementing right now. If students have gone through school and yet they have not gotten those skills, we can get them there. We should also enhance public awareness. Unless we tell the we sensitize the public about this process, public sometimes are the ones who can compel the government to put things into policy. Okay. So, for example, if the parents know that if their students or their children are trained as peer mediators, these things will reduce in school. I think the parents can put pressure on the government to put these systems in place. So sometimes we have to rely on parents, because we have parent associations, for example. We have teachers unions, okay, like COPET and others. If they embrace this, and they realize that this is the only way we can get out of where we are right now, I'm sure they can push the government to change policy. So we have a multi-stakeholders who will make this thing, put this thing into place. But can it be done quickly? That's the question you're asking, because we are in a problem already. Of course, yes.
Well, the thing is interesting that the schools seem to have a system in place whereby there has been a cascading of power.
Yes.
So you have the school heads and all of that. But then amongst the students, you already have this thing. You have the prefect system, you have captains, house captains, sector captains, all of that. So there seems to be an understanding that there can be the cascading of information and communication alongst these lines. So what has been it seems that now that has been bastardized, where it has turned to be that these individuals who are now, in fact, right now, I think second term is where a lot of these folks are elected, isn't it? Where these students are elected as these representatives. It seems that there has bastardized a system whereby now these individuals become snoops for the administration, as opposed to actually being communicators and helpers of the flow of information. How can those mechanisms that have already been set up be used for some of these things that you're talking about?
Exactly. When I was in school in 1980s, early 1980s, prefects were like kings. They were treated like kings, more than even teachers. Prefects would take you to their cube and cane you, and they would give you corporal punishment without the teachers knowing. Especially when we were in Form 1. We would be trained. There's something they used to call monolization. These things have changed right now. You can't do that to the students that we have right now. So what I'm telling the schools to do right now, for example, in peer mediation, if we can just start with the student leaders, okay? If student leaders, prefects, and captains are trained to be peer mediators, I think that will be the beginning, because we may not be able to train the whole school. So if we can just I select those, when they are being elected, they are trained to be peer mediators. One thing, they will be very calm. They will be conflict competent. They will have a lot of resilience. They will have what we call emotional intelligence. And these people will then be able to handle other students very well. And when disputes arise, even before they come to the teachers' offices, the prefect will already have handled it. So that's what I'm saying. That would be, for example, a low-hanging fruit. It's not what we call the doctrine of a low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit now would be, let's train our student leaders. Immediately they are trained. They are elected as leaders. Because if these people are trained, what you hear from other schools, because I've heard things from schools that I respected most, these very big schools, the students go there, they go through a lot of problems. They are mistreated by prefects who manhandle them, mistreat them, and this information cannot get to the teachers because the teachers have told them, fix your matters within the dormitories. This is where this kind of resistance comes from. So if we can be able to train our prefects in peer mediation as a low-hanging fruit first, then we can cascade these to other students within the community, within the school community. So I think what you have just mentioned is very important because students sometimes are elected as prefects and then they are given some kind of authority that's beyond what they are able to handle. And this one now is what brings resistance from other students. So if we can start by training our prefects and captains within the schools, I'm sure that will be a starting point. And it may help us manage what we are dealing with right now.
How does religious institutions tap into this? Because they are as well respected in society on their role in many schools. When you talk about guidance and counseling departments, most of teachers there are usually CRE teachers, right? But as well, when you read the holy books, spare the rod, spare the child. How can they tap into this space to be front runners on the same as well?
There's something you have said there which is very interesting. Spare the rod, spoil the child. I think that is really being misinterpreted from the Bible.
Yes.
You know what we mean by the rod? The rod is something I'm saying like peer mediation, educating the students to be able to manage their conflict. The rod doesn't mean the cane. You know, we literally translated it into a cane, and people are saying we are not caning our students, that's why they are behaving this way. So what I'm saying is that religious institutions really need to help. I'm encouraging people, even in Sunday schools, when children come to school, youth programs within churches, because we have that kind of youth programs. If we can also introduce peer mediation there, we can assist the schools, because when children are on leave days, when they go to church, if they find those programs there, I'm sure they will come back to school being more prepared to deal with conflict when they face it. So that's why I told you this is a multi-stakeholder issue. We all need to come back together. You know, in any country, even in America, you will find we have Democrats and Republicans who are fighting every day. But when there is a conflict, sometimes a serious problem, they come together and they forget about their party positions.
This is the Situation Room.